Okay, welcome back. Budget Committee, our Finance Committee members. Ken is going to pass out the budget materials for Article 2 and Article 6.
I would just like to make comment that the Article 6 one that was received by email is the exact same one I have tonight. If you don't need an extra copy, that's fine. But Article 2 has been updated since then. All of them actually have been updated behind the scenes to effectuate the 9.5% medical insurance increase instead of the 7 that we budgeted. So, some excellent work done by Kim Oliver. In effect, made sure we were right on the proper numbers on the medical based on the information we have at the current time. But it did create an increase of our budget from the last numbers that you've seen by about $14,600 in total. So when I pass out Article 2, it's a new article that now has the additional amount of money. I'll pass these out first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then for the committee members. Does she have the most recent one? Take a look. Okay. This is, in effect, the Rule 2.
Yeah, I guess it is.
Pass these down.
Here's the next one, Ken.
Here, oh,
Okay.
yeah, here, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Kim, the narratives are getting longer and longer, huh?
I've also
That's
now
very
passed
helpful.
out,
Very helpful.
who would like a 6? It hasn't changed, but who would like a 6?
Hasn't changed.
Right.
I'll take a look, Ken.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
I don't think that was in my packet.
There's minutes for the meeting in my packet, but he just gave them to me. Article 2, no, I didn't get
Who
them.
would like a 6?
Article 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
He just gave it to me. I
Yeah.
didn't get it.
I had one in my packet that was dated March 6th.
No, because I took this all
Thank you.
apart. Yeah. No, I didn't have any minutes for the meeting either.
I don't
But I got them.
we must.
Yes.
They did. A couple of them did.
And the next thing I'm passing out,
Oh, my God.
Trish Bovin, our principal, has done a very nice job of putting together a budget summary, which I'm going to pass out now, but she's going to deliver as we go into, when we get to the discussions of 2, she'll be able to help with that. But I'm going to pass these out anyway, just ahead of that.
We had those. You do?
Okay, you have it? Because she sent it?
Well,
I don't have,
we don't have it,
I
I
didn't
didn't
print
bring my
anything.
computer
Okay.
with me, so.
Okay,
I didn't print anything, I'm
all right.
sorry.
That's why I have plenty.
That's good.
I got it on my computer.
I was gonna bring my laptop, but I didn't.
I figured
You have
they
yours,
got-
I do, all right.
Okay.
I read them, but I don't,
You're so funny.
well, no, but why print all that stuff?
That's
when
why
they go
bring your computer and you
500 reams
sit
of
here.
paper every week.
That's why, you notice the paper's not $800.
It's us. It's us.
I know.
They're coming down.
They said, oh my gosh, scrutiny members always need paper.
All right, I now have distributed the budget materials that we're starting with, so I guess we can move to 3.
Okay, do we have some answers to the questions raised at our last budget meeting?
Yes.
Kim did some work behind the scenes that had been requested. So Kim, you want to address that work?
Right. One of the questions that was brought up last week was who was budgeted last year and who is budgeted this year for personnel. And basically,
In FY13, we had a total of 52 people that were budgeted for. And in FY14, we're at 48. And there are changes as far as within the library. At the beginning of the year in the library, there was a budget for an ed tech, and then the librarian / media specialist was brought in. That ed tech was then moved to the special ed tech line until January. And in January, it was decided that certain ed techs get 15 minutes to prepare, and that basically was budgeted through the special ed contract for the special ed grant. And to comply with all the paperwork with the grant, everybody that worked 15 minutes, anyway, to make a long story short, it was a lot of paperwork. So, sorry. And so it made more sense to move Jennifer out of the regular special ed line and put her in the grant, and then put her salary as whole, and put the 15-minute people in the operating to cut down on the paperwork. But it worked out fine. The other, basically right down through in special ed, under the resource room, we had 2 teachers. This year we have 2 teachers. We had 6 ed techs that were budgeted. And then this year, this budget, we have 5. When we get down to the next level in special ed, we have 1 teacher, this is a self-contained, and 1 teacher, and we have 2 ed techs and 2 ed techs. The difference is when we get down into the grant for local entitlement, in this fiscal year, we have 2 ed techs in there until January, then we have 3. With this budget, we're presenting 1 ed tech in the grant. Basically, everything else, let me see, we are not budgeting for the librarian media specialist, and when we get into Article 6, we'll explain a little bit more about what we're doing there to offset that. And the other area is the special ed secretary. We are not budgeting for her position as well. And that's basically all the changes. And I don't know if you need more information. Paul,
Well, if you don't mind, after the meeting, I'd like to just go over with you. I've got essentially all the detail here, and I just sort of
Yep.
like to go page by page and
We
just
can
sort
do
of
that. Yep.
review,
Yep. We can do
so that I can basically make sense of increases, decreases,
Yep.
That may be other than for personnel counts.
that. Yeah, I mean, some of your increases and decreases too are reflective. We had 2 teachers last year that were, that retired at the end of the year. And so we hired 2 more teachers that were not at the same salary level. Okay, so there's some of the differences as far as salaries go.
Yeah,
So-
and
but we'll
hopefully
go down
something like
through.
that would be in the little description page to
Yep.
help, again, make sense of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the other topic, Paul, that you wanted to visit with her about later
Well,
was the
Yeah.
stipends.
Yeah,
Maybe like
I
explanation of the
do
stipend
want
sheet.
to hash over the stipends a bit, but it, depending on what you had planned for tonight, it doesn't have to be at the workshop. I just want to be a little clearer on it when I walk out the door.
Yeah, we can go over the stipends too when we go over all the teachers, if that works. for you.
Yeah, I think the premise of it all makes sense. It's just one of the 2 pages that I received, it doesn't seem to jibe with the realities as I understand them. And so the question is it the realities or is it as I understand it?
Okay,
So, trying to nail that down. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions from anybody on the Warren Finance about our last budget meeting that you need answers for?
I have a question on Tricia's, I don't know if this is appropriate for now, but I just was reading here. about a math program. Are you switching up the math program?
Why don't
Well,
we,
listen, we can-
why don't we let her speak to the
That-
whole
that's coming up
subject
next.
matter?
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
All
coming
right.
up next.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
okay. Then let's move on then to, Article 2.
All right. Article 2, regular and secondary instructional. Now, I don't know if I was going to be having you bet on what the percentage of this particular budget is of the total. You might be surprised, you might not be surprised, but what it is 51% of the overall budget, not including the grant budgets. So 51% of all the expenses and dollars needed to develop our students' minds and their characters and their physical health and so on. Our teachers, our regular and secondary teacher component is the strongest, largest part of the budget, which shouldn't surprise you. At 51%, someone might ask, we're only talking about this budget on one night when all the other budgets had other nights, but 51% happens to be not 51% more line items, it's actually less line items. So they just happen to be bigger dollars because there are more people in each line item. And what I'd like to, as a prelude to this, since our principal is principally responsible for this side of the budget, she has been working very closely with myself and with Kim to make sure that the initiatives that we are planning for this next year to move our district ahead, our school ahead, are all accounted for, and she'll talk about that, and she's accounted for them, and she's absorbed the gifted and talented education component, which was in special ed and it's now in Article 2. That item alone is $72,000, roughly. And so the budget that has been given, a responsible budget that's been given to us from that department, which is $2,582,006, is only about $6,000 more than last year, but it includes salary increases based on contract, and it also includes the taking over of the gifted and talented. So, how does this budget, as Trish will explain, make the first of many large steps we're going to take as a district to raise the bar? So, go ahead, thank you.
Well, I feel like Snuffleupagus from Sesame Street, so I apologize if I sound that way, I really can't tell. So I wrote a quick two-page summary, I hope it's quick. The goals for this budget are to increase student achievement, improve instruction, and to continue to create an invigorating and interesting and learning environment where all students feel supported and successful. So the priorities are the best possible education for all Acton students. Efficient use of resources, reduced waste, so really trying to take what we have for time and talent and put it to the best possible way. And maximize learning time. And something you're not going to see in this budget, but will come up later on in the school regular meeting, is next year's proposed calendar. To look at maximum learning time, the calendar reflects the fewest number of early release days and no delayed starts in the Acton school budget as compared to our two nearby communities. So it's just one example of maximizing our best resources and giving students as much time as possible. Nearby districts have upwards of 7 to 14 early release days a year. And I think including the last day of school, I think we're at 4 next year. So really very, very conscientious of that. Students need to be with the teachers. And so that's just one example, which, like I said, it's not in the budget, but it reflects in that way, and the way decisions were made. The implementation of the Common Core standards will take monumental time and effort for the next several years. It is my expectation that we will need more collaborative time than ever before to be successful. An additional amount of training on a better math program, aligning standards, and creating proficiency-based report card are just a few of the necessary parts of the instructional staff development that needs to be accomplished. While I believe that our small size has more pros than cons, we do have some challenges unique to our size. Although the collaboration with Sanford administration and staff has increased this past year, we are far more dependent on teachers doing their own research and implementation of new learning than any other system. We do not have a significant amount of outside funding that can support the training in all the different endeavors systematically and universally. The teachers and staff here at Acton Elementary School have risen to the challenges thus far, but we have new challenges ahead. Because of these challenges, I will rely heavily on teachers and staff currently employed to wear multiple hats, and everyone will be required to do whatever it takes to move Acton forward. Ed tech, special education teachers, specialists, classroom teachers, and even volunteers will be essential to implementing the new standards and the strategic plan we are developing. And I've listed that when they're not involved in classroom instruction, all the staff will be doing some of the following: participating in additional training, and that includes even summertime, after school, evening, on their own time. There's a lot of new learning happening. Collaborating on student learning in professional learning communities, providing RTI support, the intervention plan, both small group and direct instruction. Duty coverage, meetings, researching better practices, instruction, differentiation, etc. Investigating the newest regional testing of Smarter Balance, and developing common assessments at all grade levels for all subjects. I believe the proposed level of staff will permit us to continue to educate Acton students at the high level of which we have been accustomed and raise the standards even higher. At this current time, it is anticipated to have one class per grades in kindergarten, first, third, and fourth. The second grade requires 2 classes, as do most likely the 5th and the 6th. The 7th and 8th grades are departmentalized, yet we are also trying to think outside the box to accommodate the smaller sizes while still meeting the highly qualified teacher status for all our subjects and grades. The best service model of education in the upper grades is still in the planning stages. However, I am 100% sure that the current classroom teachers are essential to the vision of the school. Although there is a plan to return to provide and support in the library and computer lab with the education technicians, the overall expectation and demand for the specialist collaboration and contribution is not decreasing. The addition of a second BAM morning curtain for our preschoolers, bless you, as well as the dependence on the specialist staff for intervention and enrichment strategies will increase their instructional time with students. I've listed in the next section there, some of the training and staff, the different organizations. Each teacher belongs to at least one outside or subject-affiliated association. Mathematics, New England League of Middle Schools, National Geographic Society. All of these different connections allow our teachers to reach out beyond the school to get more learning, to know the latest and greatest, to get support for them. Because we have so many people that are singular in their content area or in their grade level, it is really important that they go beyond the Acton walls to stay connected to their field of expertise. Equipment and supplies, the organizational equipment, like the keyboard for music department software and other classroom support items you'll see in here, but it's really a minimum amount of requests for equipment this year. To highlight decreases or loss of services, there was a K2 equipment lease, I think tied to technology that is no longer there. The transportation, because GT is now under my budget, you see that adds to my budget, but we have also discussed transporting the math, geometry students to the high school. That will stop for several reasons. The scheduling has become a disaster. The high school is now changing to an all-year math program every other day. It cannot possibly match our schedule. The transportation for the high school students, whether it's 2 or 4, for that one semester is over $3,000. So we are now looking at servicing those kids here in our school. I've put in the budget additional books to get the exact geometry for high school level geometry to be taught. I've put enough money requests in the staff development to allow additional training because our classroom teachers have not yet been teaching geometry at that level. I am in close contact with Sanford. The curriculum coordinator, Jan Goldsberry, is working with me on aligning our curriculum, on ensuring our student success. It makes good sense to service the kids here. It's less disruptive to their other classes and the other learning that takes place. And again, as far as we know right now, Sanford and Noble High School, as well as other high schools, are doing a delayed start on Thursdays which has been such a challenge for our students who are going to high school on Thursday mornings for class, because their entire schedule is offset, yet our K-8 schedule is not. So this will allow us to meet their needs here in the school. So a short-term investment, which is still less than the driving, will hopefully produce long-term results. So the increases, the gifted and talented, is pretty self-explanatory. The field trips, the normal allowance in the budget this year is $450 for the field trip line. There are some exceptions. There is an every other year trip to the Science Museum of Science in Boston. It's for 7th and 8th grade. So it wasn't in last year's budget, it's in this year's, it won't be in next year's. So that's 2 grades every other year, that increases the field trip line. The other request, which has not been in here, I want to say at least 6, maybe even as much as 8 years ago, that the Canterbury Lake trip, celebration trip for the 8th grade class, was pulled out of the regular school budget. The teachers and students have been working hard since that time to do fundraising. Acton students and teachers are exhausted from fundraising. We are fundraising so many things that used to be able to be in the budget. And while I understand fundraising has its place, we're often forcing our students to compete with each other, with the PTG fundraising work they do. And it's becoming a question of haves and have-nots once again. Those that have family that can afford to buy the items, get it. And those that have not the family, we are trying to supplement and support to make this happen. So although the policy has not yet changed, the request is there. And so I put the money in the budget in hopes that when the policy change request goes through, we will have allotted the money for the Canterbury Lake trip. And we will no longer have to worry about the haves and the have-nots attending this celebration. For many students, it's the end of 9 years in this school. So I really think it's valuable to not have those kids question whether or not they can afford to go. You will see books, the library books, the book room books, the literature circle books. You just can never have enough. But we're trying to support the fictional increase and the nonfiction increase that's required, especially the nonfiction, in the new Common Core standards. There's a lot more informational text reading that is required, nonfiction reading for students. The curriculum, Holly asked about the math and focus. For the last 2 years, the K-5 teachers have been researching, reading, investigating, piloting, and practicing with a program related to the Singapore math. They have studied number sense, analyzed the data that our math scores are not as high as our reading scores, and they have really broken it apart. And if I can put you on the spot for a moment, Sylvia, can you explain what number sense is in a way that why we're changing programs?
Number sense really comes into kindergarten. They need to be able to look at an amount, and see 2 or 3 items or 4. And they need to be able to do that instantly. They need to, we're using 10 frames. It's a box with 5 boxes and 5 boxes. They need to look at the 10 frame and know that there's 2 red dots and 8 blue dots. This gets them into visually seeing the numbers, the number sentences. We also do the 5 frames too. We're using a math program to do that, and then we also do it in the classroom. A lot of hands-on, internalizing the numbers, and just so it's just a part of them. I kind of equate it to the phonological awareness that we do for reading in kindergarten. This is the number sense, and the Math in Focus is the program that really addresses this. When we took and we were looking at the Math in Focus, it also directly aligns with the new Common Core. When you go and read on the Common Core, the Math Common Core, they actually did research to find out why Singapore was testing the highest on the TIMSS, which is an international math test. And they found that, well, originally the people in Singapore came to the United States and they went back and developed their own math program. And so that's the Common Core. It actually is kind of based along the Singapore math. So it kind of, all weaves back and forth.
And we've noticed, although we've made AYP year after year with the math, there's still been a lag in our scores. And I know in the upper grades, Mark Noel's not here tonight, but I know he was expressed several times, the concern of the lack of retention. It's not that they haven't been taught the regular math. It's not that they haven't been taught multiplication or understanding math. It's the retention of. And so this program is supportive of that. It's K to 5. The 6th, 7th, and 8th grade have not come to an agreement of a next best program for themselves. So they are continually working on what they have and, filling in the gaps in an individualized way. With the exception of geometry. Every year, probably for the last, I'm going to guess about 8 years now or so, we have had anywhere from 1 to 7 students who have shown us exceptional math ability and an independent ability to take that to the next level. And so we have arranged, years ago it started, to work with Sanford High School for them to go to the high school to receive that geometry instruction. Originally, it was the first block of the school day, and there was no delayed start, and it worked. But as Sanford has changed their schedule, it's working less and less for our students here. They are having to miss some of their other core classes here in order to get that service from Sanford. And, we always need to stop and reflect at what's working. And so I've talked to Mark Noel, I've talked to Melinda Van Houwer, our GT person, and so we have decided that we will work with Sanford on what needs to be accomplished so that our kids would test out at the same level if they were taking this course in Sanford, but we will service our students here. And again, the initial purchase of these books with the teacher support is about $1,000, which is 1/3 of the transportation, but it's not going to be that money every year either. So, initial cost in these books, I think we'll still reap the benefits. And again, I have built in to my request for staff development to allow some additional teacher training. So either Mark or Melinda will also feel expert in the delivery of the instruction.
Can I just interject? I don't understand why we have technology then, because our students should be able to sit here and listen to the teacher in Sanford the way we do when Kevin's away, say, and wants to be here at our meeting. There's FaceTime. I don't know. There's all
Actually,
these
that's a
things.
great point. I gotta tell you, having had a student who's on the ALEX program, my own child, computers can work. I can't guarantee that, again, the alignment of a course and the availability on Sanford's end to provide that directly. Now, that's not to say we can't investigate an online geometry class. It might not be through Sanford, though. Their time might still not match our time.
Yeah, but you could DVR it or whatever.
I'm open to that conversation.
Can't do that?
No question and answer if you do that.
Yes.
It's not live.
So we've got, that would require further investigation,
And Sanford would have to play.
and Sanford would have to be on board with that.
I don't know, I'm just saying, I feel like we
Is
have
there-
this technology, just like when we talk about, we need all these books. You're telling me no one's using the iPad and reading, like Kindles and stuff?
I don't think
I always
it's,
feel the school is further back
no.
in
we
technology and everyone else goes
We are introducing
forward.
technology as well. It's not an either or. It's just like it's not phonemic awareness or whole language. It's again, we're increasing the overall knowledge, and the support has to be in both ways. Math and Focus is not necessarily textbooks for the kids, but it is a more systematic approach, and requires training, it requires understanding. Sylvia has been on the forefront of doing this research, but many of the other primary teachers have attended workshops and trainings. It is a mind shift. We are demanding a great deal of these teachers. And so giving them some material support along with the additional training, is an essential piece of us moving forward. And I gotta say, Sanford has been tremendous. I'm sending 5 teachers Thursday afternoon weather permitting, to work on aligning curriculum with their counterparts in the same content area. So Jan Goldsberry and Marianne Sylvain, who's one of the assistant principals at Sanford High School, has worked with me to arrange this, so they're all going, so that they're doing the work that they needed to do, but they're not doing it in isolation. So whenever possible, I'm making that teaming work. But actually, when I talked to Chuck Potter, who's one of the elementary principals the other day, and said, you know, what the elementary level is doing, he wants to know, can he come here next fall to watch my teachers in action in their math program? Because they're struggling with the same thing, but they're not as far along as we are.
What is this replacing? What's this math? Is it
Everyday math.
Still, you still have everyday?
Everyday math.
That's what I wondered. That's what I was wondering
Yeah.
when I asked the question.
Yeah.
Our
So-
kids were involved in
Yeah,
transition, and that
exactly.
was, they
Right.
started out with one math, and then the everyday, it was
Right.
that was very difficult for them.
Yeah,
And it's very,
that's why, when I
very
saw that, I'm like,
difficult to align the everyday math to the new Common Core.
Well, thank God.
Yeah.
really?
Building off of what Mary was saying, have we looked into, it may not be appropriate, I know that there's stuff out there in regards to the virtual learning, sort of the asynchronous online courses, where there's some, where a lot of it's heading is, where there are check-in times where you are with the teacher, with your group, but then there's stuff to do on
Right.
your own.
Right.
Maine was playing around with that, Florida's done a lot, but it's usually you pay for courses, but for some students who are advanced, it might be an option, but it's different, it's totally different from what
Right.
Trish is talking about here, but that might be something to look at down the road. I don't know.
Are the eighth graders getting high school credit when they take the geometry then?
If they attend there, they are.
If they go in the ninth
Right.
grade, then they'll
Right.
go in with the geometry
Right.
credit already.
But if they're eighth graders at the junior high in Sanford, they are not.
Oh.
And the other thing that's interesting right now is Sanford's only requiring 3 math credits for high school. So it's not holding them back if they, as far as credit-wise. So us delivering it here still allows them 3 years of math when they get to high school, or 4 years of math, and they won't be behind in credit. The other conversation will be to really always make sure that we're selecting students who are truly ready for that next step. It's developmental as well as, the stages. And we do have some students who maybe understand some of the concepts, but are missing some of the foundation. And we would be better off enriching their algebra experience than pushing them to the next course. And so, again, until Sanford changes that number, the credit to me is less of an issue as opposed to delivering appropriate instruction for what they're ready for. I know, because my boys go to Noble, I know Noble requires 5 years of credit of math. So that 8th grade year does matter if you're taking advance to get that credit, because it impacts that total.
Well, I just wonder whether they would have a better chance of getting into AP classes if they're going in as freshmen, that geometry, if they have that geometry credit, then they can move right along and get into all the AP classes.
That's a great point. The last I knew, and again, Sanford is in the same, all these schools are trying to learn and do better. The last I knew, Sanford had a open choice to take AP.
Oh, okay.
So you don't
Yeah.
have to be on that track. Still true?
Yeah.
Some information's still good. So that's not going to hinder them.
Okay.
Again, my concern is not pushing them to go beyond what they're absolutely academically and developmentally ready to handle. And that's been part of the decision with certain kids going to the geometry. They may be academically ready, but they're not emotionally or developmentally ready for that independence. So delivering it here allows us to be better stewards of their experience.
The kids that have gone to Sanford, though, we've had some thrive. haven't we,
Absolutely.
In that program. They're really-
Absolutely. And some would have been ready in 7th grade. And we have to constantly look at each individual student. What do they need? By having this option here, I think we can do a better job of doing that. It gives us that range. If you have a 4th grader able to read or write on an 8th grade level, we don't stop them. But having an 8th grader ready for a high school level math puts us at a disadvantage if we're not preparing ourselves to handle those levels. But it's a lot of work.
Would you like to look at the individual items or some of the ones that are significant and exceptions And one of the largest categories that's a significant exception, of course, is the public tuition to, since we're talking about Sanford High School, you might look at the third page there and see that if we have less students going there, we're going to obviously pay them less. It's pro rata.
Was the budget based on actual numbers, or did we leave any? Because we've gotten in trouble with that sometimes in the past by budgeting actual numbers of bodies that are going in from here, from what we have now. Because when kids move in,
It's
into
$9,000
the system,
a child.
it's a lot of money to have to, like if you have, let's say you just have like 3 kids move in, then all of a sudden your budget's up $27,000. We used to budget that way, planning on a couple of extras, and then we were kind of chastised for it, and they said, well, why, because we had money left over, because maybe that year somebody dropped out instead of moving in. So we started doing it more on an average of like the last 2 or 3 years, and budgeting for those so that we could have that little bit of cushion.
The new school in Baxter are actual numbers. The high school is a little bit higher than what we actually are right now, by a few students, but not, and I left it that way.
So there is a little play there
There's a
if somebody
little,
moves, yeah,
but there isn't a wide berth.
right.
I mean, that's something we can revisit.
Yes.
It's not kind of budget related. You talk a lot about the students who are gifted or talented and ready to go to high school and in the 8th grade. Now, what about that guy who isn't? I don't hear you talk a lot about kids on the cusp.
I'm not sure, we were talking specifically about the gifted and talented program.
No,
So-
but you're talking about 8th grade students who can go to the high school for geometry. You've talked about kids who could read, a 4th grade. What about the kid who can't read at the 8th grade level? I don't hear anybody talking about the extra help that they're going to get.
Okay. They absolutely do get the help they need. We have after-school programs, we have teachers who meet them where they are and bring them much further along than anybody could have ever imagined. Some kids that might seem average in any day-to-day classroom excel in one area that we discover. Whether it's a hands-on learning experience, whether it's getting feedback from their teacher in their writing so that they come back one more time and excel at that writing. Whether it's a quiet kid in maybe the math class, but they're the most vocal debater in the social studies class. So I really believe we do an outstanding job servicing all our kids. But there are always those extremes that we have to think more creatively because you've stretched beyond, and when I say normal, there's a wide range. There's a wide range. But even, in our scores, you'll see that most of our kids are exceeding what other people consider the standard. So those kids are getting intervention help during the day. They're getting before-school help if they need it. They're getting after-school help if they need it. We have electronic online support programs, computer programs. They can go down to the computer lab and work on a specific skill that they need help in. But I would say we'd be hard-pressed. When I go and talk to other principals, you'd be hard-pressed to see another school more dedicated to the individual student than here in Acton. So it's not just about the extremes, but we have to sometimes create something because as great as our classroom teachers are, there's sometimes that one student who just needs what nobody else does. And I want to service them here. I want to make accommodations for them here. The middle of the group is still higher than a lot of other schools have, and they are definitely getting their needs met. I would love for you to come actually see it in action. I think the best way to show you is for you to come for classroom visits, and I will walk you through the school, and I'm telling you, you will be amazed. So just give me a call.
And I think too, just to add to that, I think why the Gifted and Talent program and the high school program is come up tonight specifically is because of the budgetary changes that affect those particular programs. It's not that they're any more important, it's just that there are changes in this year's budgets in those areas.
And maybe I take something for granted because I've been here so long, that you don't know. We don't service just the top 5% with our Gifted and Talented program. The Explore program is called the Explore program, not the GT, for that very reason. That K-8 gets to explore deeper thinking, challenging questions, enriching activities. So it is not available just to that top 5 or 3% as might be available in other schools. Every single student comes in contact with the Explore teacher, with the Gifted and Talented program, and we try to maximize their learning all their career here. So I just take it for granted. Yeah. In another school, it's very limited. You know, it might be you see that GT person one afternoon once a week. That's not the case with the kids here. Every child comes in contact with that experience. And it has been a mainstay of Acton for as long as I can remember, probably a good 20 years. And that's why it's called the Explore program, whereas other school systems will call it the Gifted and Talented program. So maybe that didn't come across as clear. So I'm telling you, it knocks your socks off when you see what happens in these classrooms.
But that is a great question, because people for years have got that confused with just the title of Gifted and Talented. They thought that it was the gifted, children, and it's not. It's pretty much all of them, And also in some of the classrooms, our teachers do a great job, but I believe the ed techs in regular classrooms, aren't they there also to pick up and help the kids also? Or
It's all hands on deck. Nobody.
Yeah, so I mean, it's more than just, one teacher in a classroom, I mean, the ed techs fill in quite a void. Tracy Scully sent out something to the board today, the value of ed technicians and everything they do, and I'll let you see a copy of that, It's good, I like information, and this would explain to you some of the things that they do, and how they can pick up beyond just what a teacher does, so. But it's a great question, and a lot of people have asked that same thing, I wondered that over the years,
Maybe it's time to change the name of the program.
Well, that's why we call it Explore.
Yeah, that's better.
That's why they changed it, Tom, you're right, that's why they did change it.
Gifted and Talent's a state term.
It is.
And we're still doing the STAR program, right?
STAR, intervention.
G&T, Explore G&T.
Mr. Cody?
Trish said a lot of really good and important things about, like, some of the attention to, the, not necessarily the top 2% of the kids. I think one of the biggest, most important things in that area has been common planning times that we as staff have had, because in a given day, those kids that you hear that term, that kid just fell through the cracks, okay? And I think that's a kid that you're talking about a little bit. It's tough sometimes as a group of teachers to get together during a school day and even after school, where everybody's going different places for meetings or whatever. And when we have that common planning time in which our whole team can get together once a week, we are collaborating and identifying, this kid right now is having some difficulties in my class. What are you seeing? And we bounce things off each other, and then lots of times, right within that, on a weekly basis, we're getting a new plan of attack, a new intervention for them. It may be anything from more formal to an RTI to just, we want to watch them a little more closely because they kind of haven't been having a tough week in the last couple of weeks. So that common planning time for teachers, I'll tell you, is a great way to make sure that a kid is not going to fall through the cracks for a very long time, once a week.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Trish?
Related to that conversation, there was mention of, being open to all the students. Last year I had a number of 210 students in-house from K to 8 is, I assume that that's reasonable, or what are we talking about for next year in terms of changing that number? I assume it's a little lower, but what is the number?
About 200. Without knowing the kindergarten count at this point.
Okay, so thank you.
I have a quick question. If we do, you mentioned kiddos sometimes going into the Sanford school system, or when we have to pay for them to go down there, and if they come in halfway through the year, do we have to pay the full tuition for the full year if they come in halfway through the year?
No.
That's good.
No.
That's good. So they do.
It's adjusted every month.
It's adjusted
And
every quarter.
Sanford has
Yeah.
really been, they've really worked very well with us over the last 2 or 3 years on the tuition piece, because the new tuition rates are actually set sometime in December. And we really got caught short a few times because we budgeted so much not knowing what the rate was going to be. And then when the rate came through, we didn't have the money, enough money in the budget to cover those expenses. So what Sanford has agreed to do in the last 3 or 4 years is whatever the rate is right now, whatever the rate is, was set in December of last December. That's what we'll pay for next year, for the whole year. So we can budget that. What we're paying this year is whatever the rate was set in December of 2012. So they've really made it a much better process for us to budget for the tuition by doing that. Because the state sets what the state rate is, but they don't come out until December. So by that time, everybody's budgets are already.
Question about one of the line items, 6110. Can someone clarify the narrative?
Benchmark assessment testing for reading and writing.
Is it benchmark or is it ventured?
Benchmark.
But I wasn't sure if it was a
Yep.
particular product, so I was just curious if it was a particular test they're giving, so.
Okay, so it's bench, yeah, it says
There's
benchmark.
spelling errors in it.
Yeah.
No, I did
Well,
Tough to read.
capitalized, no, I
So-
thought it might be something,
Right,
the,
and the benchmark testing is.
What is that?
Replacing the DRA for formative assessment for reading and writing throughout the school year, as far as.
so instead of the DRA, what do you use?
Benchmark is the name of the program.
Oh.
Again,
It's not ventured, it's
No.
benchmark, but it
That's
is
why
an
it's
actual
capitalized.
name.
It is
and
an
it's
actual
not-
name. Again, I have truly encouraged the teachers to test things out, to pilot things. So if they can get something free and a pilot of it and try it out before they ask me for it, that's what they have done. So they borrowed the benchmark testing and tried it K to 4, K to 5? K to 5. And it gave them much more depth. Can somebody who's used it, maybe you have a better explanation than me? No?
Does it give you, does it give you enough, or do you need more? Because there's some other progress monitoring benchmark assessment sites out there that are also free.
Oh, really?
Easy CBM is one.
Based
seen
off
that?
of what I explored, I personally did not end up testing a kid with it, but from what we watched and what we looked at, it goes into more detail about, with the fluency, specific details of what the kid's missing in the fluency and the comprehension, whereas the DRAs don't go into that much detail. It just gives you the fluency and the comprehension and stuff, so. It's a
So-
little bit more information for us when we're.
Awesome.
So that's the goal, is again, to get that formative assessment done and to have it be highly effective to inform instruction and redirect the teacher if a student is, what happens with averages, sometimes you do an average on a test or a quiz and the kid seems to do okay, but it doesn't always target the specific need of the learning. and that's what we're looking for. So now Kevin has just handed me another name to look up, and I will.
It's
So,
give us some freebies and we'll test it.
easycbm.com. It's got math and language arts, benchmark assessments K through 8, fluency, phonological awareness, comprehension. It's not the best, but it's good. It's norm referenced, and it's out of, I think, the University of Oregon.
so
And
we
you'll
test
notice
that out,
that-
if that works. save
You
money.
notice the field trip line is up significantly. She mentioned it, the Canopy Lake Park. I have to give you a little bit of nostalgia. My family business, we had 300 employees and their families. Half a dozen years at least, we had our company picnic at Canopy Lake Park that the company paid for. And so I have a soft spot in my heart for that, so I would never get in the way of our students going
Well,
there.
it's truly one of those things where we really are struggling. The last 2 years, you know, David talked about the common planning time, the team will meet, and it's who can't afford it, who's struggling. You know, the fund, can't fundraise now because so-and-so's doing it for this event, and can't fundraise now because they're trying to raise money for their field trip. You know, the 5th, 6th grade does a spaghetti dinner to fundraise. The PTG is always fundraising to try to help us out for everything. It just, you know, the team will let us know. They just did some fundraising, Uncle Jerry's Teas, am I right, his name?
Yep.
And so they send out an email and said, we have got a list of students who cannot seem to sell anything. And so the teachers, the staff, we're asked, send somebody my way, send somebody my way. So we're constantly subsidizing. You know, it's not that we don't want to help, it's just that many kids every year is growing who just can't seem, you don't want parents making that decision, you can't go because, you know, it's just heartbreaking. So,
I can't even tell you how many boxes of Girl Scout cookies I have right now.
If I could just say, that trip is something that I think has been going on long enough, that the kids that come through this school, they know about it, they've heard about it, they're anticipating, they know when they get there that that's their big trip, and they look forward to it. And the kids look forward to it all year, but little kids have heard about it and they know about it, and it would be tragic if they got up there and then it wasn't there for them to go. So it's something that's really important. So I'd hate to see any kid or any family stressing because their child might not be able to go on that trip.
agree.
Are you telling me that there were children that stayed here because they didn't earn enough money?
No, they went, they all went.
We had to find the money elsewhere. And it becomes a stress. The fundraising is becoming a stress. Because we call up the parents, did you get the information? Yes, I can't afford it, you know, and so we're subsidizing that with either the Student Assistance Fund, teachers' pockets have been opened more than once, you know, just here. School board member pockets. And I would just like to level the playing field for the kids and become a non-issue for parents. I just want to take the stress off the table. So I realize that may not be always an educational reason, but their well-being, it's very stressful. This week has been a week that fundraising money was due, and, you know, I'm having conversations with the teachers about those that can't, that just don't have it. And I don't want that to be a conversation at the dinner table.
Just 8th grade, is that what it is?
Yes.
8th grade, yeah.
And it's after graduation, isn't it? The day after,
No.
or is it before?
It's before.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that's very unique and wonderful about this building, too. Kindergarten through 8th grade in the same building. Now, where else are you going to see that? Center-based learning is the common phrase. Kindergarten through 2nd in one building, 3rd through 5th in another building, 6th through 8th in another building. And here, they're all here. They know each other, they have a tradition, and it's just, again, the culmination of that 9-year experience that is so unique to us.
You have to go north and east of Augusta to find another elementary school, publicly funded K-8. I know when I go to principal gatherings, I'm an unusual bird.
And you can't deny that doesn't help their education, because you have a kid that comes through the school system like my two did. By the time my kids got up there, their rep was already up there. They knew, you know, the teachers talk, they know what's a positive and a negative, what you're going to have to work on with this kid. They've watched these kids grow up. So it just helps. It's not like they're coming in cold and you have no idea about this
Right.
child. They've got
These
ideas.
teachers in here know every little kid's name.
Yeah.
All of you that get off the bus, you know,
good.
every day. It's,
Then we send them to Sanford, as my daughter says, they're like cattle compared to.
So
That was the word she used one day.
so huge.
Paul?
When I was growing up, before color was invented, one thing I noticed in elementary school is that, you know, when you were in a particular grade, you know, you might have known everybody in your grade, depending on how many classrooms there were, but there was very little interaction among the grades. You know, even 1 or 2 grades different from yours, you just never saw those kids, you never interacted with them. And one thing I've always been impressed with in this school is that there's a lot of mentoring going on. That the younger kids are sort of mentored by the older kids feel responsibility to the younger ones, and, you know, and that ties into the whole bullying thing, anti-tolerance of that kind of a thing. It's basically more of a family than a school
Community.
in that respect. And I've always thought that, you know, the school did a really good job with socializing the kids and giving them a sense of responsibility for their fellow students and community and that kind of a thing.
Thank you.
And does
Well
not
said.
your STAR program, that also brings upper grade teachers with lower grade students, correct?
It does.
So that's another crossover on the staff level for people that don't understand what the STAR program is.
Right. I mean, this truly should be the heart of the community. Selectman Shields here is also one of our best volunteers. So it's not just the 8th graders that are seen with the little kids.
With his wife.
With Mrs. Shields. You know, we have a small but strong following of volunteers that make a huge difference in our school. The STAR program is about intervention. We have continually, again, something in our training recently is about plan, check, and adjust. And we're doing that constantly for our students and for ourselves. There's a lot of new stuff going on in education. It can be overwhelming. And without that team approach of people working together and mentoring each other and modeling and taking risks, it's not going to work. There's no way the old classroom teacher of I'm in this by myself, for myself, it just can't work. There's just too much out there. So the intervention piece really does require you to reach outside your classroom. And even right now, teachers are involved with something called Flex Learning. It's in my budget. It's teacher workshop time, but it's done differently. We have staff members, several of which are here tonight, offering their expertise to other staff members. So I'm not paying for out-of-district workshops for these people because I have an expert or 2 or 3 on staff, and they're learning from each other. And again, if you walk through the halls, you will see something that started on one end and was learned and adapted to meet another end. And again, that can't happen without common planning time, without the discussion with each other. But there's also a great respect for what each other has for expertise. You know, somebody told me when I started the principal job a few years ago that it was the worst time to go into administration because it was so hard. And I hear a lot of talk outside of the school about it being so hard in education. It's not easy. Teachers aren't doing it because it's easy. But I tell you, it's one of the most exciting times to be in education because things are really happening. Teachers are taking risks and making a difference for kids. And I know we're talking budget, but for me, it's not just the numbers. It's what you're getting for your numbers. And you're getting a lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Excellent.
On Article 2?
Article 2 has the 3 different departments though, correct?
Yes, isn't that fun?
Alrighty then. I do have a couple questions, and one ties back to the what I'll call head count, for teachers and ed techs. My understanding is that for 3 to 8, we're budgeting for 11 teachers and 2 ed techs, is that
12
correct?
teachers and 2 ed techs.
12. And so that's, I think last year was 1.5 for the ed techs and same 12 teachers.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's 12 altogether.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
There'll be 1 in the K to 2. So there's 4 in the K to 2.
Right. And there's 8.
4 teachers.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I had last year, based on that.
Yeah,
So it's just not 5?
the teachers haven't changed.
So last year I had 5 teachers in K to 2.
So it
Well,
should be 4.
Title I is a teacher as well, but she's in a grant.
Yeah, so
And
I'm sort
15%
of
of her
pretending that the
salary.
grant folks don't exist because they're not really part of the budget that's in front of us.
Title one.
Even though, obviously, they're very valuable and,
Right.
but I'm trying to equate when I go to figure out the magnitude per person of a given dollar amount, that's kind of where we're coming from here, at least with my questions. So, what we have in front of us is, and I know the gifted and talented is 1, so that's, I'm trying to figure out the K to 2 and the 3 to 8.
Okay, let's go to the 3 to 8, okay? The 3 to 8 also includes the GT. No, it doesn't. Has 3, the music, the art, and the phys ed. They're in there as well. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teachers.
Including the art music?
No, that'd be 12.
Right.
Okay, so last year, I think, was 12, and now we have 12 again this year.
Yes.
The teachers have not, the number of teachers are all still the same.
And so we have 2 ed techs as assigned to 3 to 8 as well.
Yeah.
And K to 2?
Is it 4 ed techs?
There's only 2 ed techs from 3 to 8? Is that what you said?
In
Well, that's
regular,
what I'm
in
asking.
The
regular.
narrative says 4, and then in
Irregular
parentheses it
ed.
has 2.
Yeah, it's 2. It's
Okay.
2, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was a typo we caught after.
2 for 3 to 8, is that what you're saying?
2 for 3 to 8 ed techs, yes, that's what I'm hearing.
And
Those are
then
regular ed.
Regular ed tech.
Regular ed.
Now special.
And 4 for K to 2.
That's kind of handy.
Okay, so like Judy is.
2 for 3-8, 2 for K2.
Right.
How many for K to 2?
2.
And what about teachers for K to 2? Same at 5?
5.
How long's it been at 2?
It was 1 last year, it was the 1 year, the year before, as far as I know.
It's,
From 3 to 8?
this is where the state doesn't help, because they're compartmentalized us. If you look at our regular ed teachers, the Title I teacher, Title I ed tech person comes under regular ed, because Title I doesn't give us enough money. Okay. The computer lab ed tech counts as a regular ed teacher, regular ed tech. Then I have 1 that's shared K to 4 and 1 that's shared 5 to 8. And those 2 have been in that situation of 1 K to 4 and 1 5 to 8 since I was still in the classroom, so quite a while. Quite a while.
Okay, so, going back to the 3 to 8 teacher salary line, I'm just trying to, all right, so that one actually went up 2.5%, same number of teachers, that's readily explainable from steps and,
Right, contract.
okay, so we're good there. Going down to the group insurance, which is
Okay,
the
group
ones that got changed
Yes.
from the RE2. So basically, we were going from like a 7% increase projection to 9.5, or is it 7.5 to 9?
No,
Which one?
it's 7 to 9.5.
Okay.
Okay, because the 9.5 is the cap.
All right, so what I see for the budget line, and what I don't have is the percentages for the new numbers that we were handed tonight. I'll get on the spreadsheet with what I got emailed. But as of that, in terms of the budget lines, I'm seeing a 13.8% increase in the budget line. The expended for the year before was actually significantly less than was budgeted the year before. So I'm just wondering where that 7 or 9.5% was added to, because it wasn't added to this current year's budget number. Just trying to figure out where it started from.
Okay. When I take when I figured out the insurances, I took what we actually pay right now for each teacher, and I added the 9.5% to those teachers.
Okay, so that's a number I don't have yet, and I won't have till next year. Got it.
What?
It's here, isn't it?
He's happy.
On this new page?
Well, at least, I don't have the ongoing budget stuff at this moment in front of me. But that's where my percentages get involved. So you're starting with current expenditure.
Yes. So
Active
right
as
now,
we're going.
it's like, right now, I know what it costs for a single person with an adult only, adult with children, or full family. And the other things to keep in mind is, in this year's budget, we had 2 retired teachers. One of them is in the 3 to 8, where part of their incentive to retire was we covered their insurance for a year, so that's in that line, even though they're not physically teaching. And we've had teachers that have changed their status. So they could have been a full family and now they're down to 2 adults. Or they could have been, married and spouse, and now because their spouse was on Social Security or Medicare or something, then they only have single now. So what I really did was say, this is where the statuses of all our teachers are right now. And I just did the actual math all the way across, which I can show you as well. if
Yeah,
you-
that's cool. Yeah. Okay, so that, and that number really, and effectively, especially with family changes, is highly subject to being changed
Life.
at a moment's notice.
Right, it changes through the year, yes.
Babies happen.
That's why they call it. Got it. Thank you.
What do you think? More people say that.
Any other questions on Article 2?
Can I know this is kind of late and off the cuff, but can I add another line item? We need to review Article 8, which is the principal's budget. I was forgotten, and
Article 8?
Yeah,
We haven't actually talked about that.
We haven't talked about it. I've got printouts for everybody. It's a very straightforward budget. Can we add that?
I didn't realize that we didn't have it on the 11th when I wasn't here, so.
Yeah, we had it part of the 7, 8, 9, 12, but then we pulled it out because we thought we were going to talk about it because it's Trish's budget.
Right, okay.
Okay?
I see, right.
And as I was sitting here, I went,
It's the smallest budget, of course, because it's the least number of people on the
It
least.
is, it's one page.
Right.
But I would like to review it tonight, so that way we've covered every article.
Why not?
Yeah. Can we do it after Article 6, though? Because I think
We
Article
can,
2
yeah,
and 6
we can,
kind of
but-
go together.
And then,
Needless.
well, they all go together. They all-
That's true.
They
Yeah.
all go together. So I do have copies for everybody. but I-
Okay,
Sure.
let's move on then to Article 6.
And Article 6 changed because of our new suggested configuration for the learning that's going to be going on in this facility, where we sit in the library. And you will see several items on there. And if you go to the second page, one of them you'll see is contracted services, $12,000. And that's a new item that I'm working with Dave and Eric at Sanford to have contractual services for library coordination of activities through the assistance of a senior librarian at one of the Sanford elementary schools, which has a curriculum that would be very similar to ours. So what we have offered to Sanford is to pay for a portion of that teacher's time, as well as in here there is a ed tech salary that has increased, because the ed tech salary is returning to a model that worked successfully in the past with someone who happens to be in this room, who is very good at that work. That's Mrs. Goodwin. So those are the two, that's how we're saying that we will provide the new initiative in library with that model. Any comments, Trish, that you might have beyond that?
No, again, I got to speak very highly for Sanford's willingness to have the conversation as we work out what could be.
Mhm. It works so well with school lunch. We now have a portion of our school lunch management is actually the same person that manages the Sanford school lunch, and we pay per hour, in effect, a contract for her to run our lunch program as well. Again, anything we can do to cooperate, whether it be educationally with in staff development, whether it be some talent that may be a little underutilized at Sanford that we can make their day even more complete, anything we can do that way is a very positive for us.
The other, one other area that also changed, like Ken stated, the ed tech is now fully funded in this operating budget, and it was partially funded in a rural grant, and we didn't want to do that. What has changed as well is under the IT, basically we swapped us. We put 13,000 of IT into the rural grant and had taken that out of that to keep it balanced.
And that position is the IT, is the ed tech in IT grant funded, or is that in the
No,
budget?
it's local. But she put materials and equipment.
Oh, I see.
Things
Right,
that don't
yes.
require Main State retirement.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Software, and I think there were specific items. We moved Microsoft Office into the rural grant, and we moved a couple other products into the rural grant. Because it was one of those things that if we didn't have enough money in the rural grant, or it got cut, or whatever, it wasn't detrimental to, but we'd really like to have it, but, we'll wait till the grant comes through and we do the paperwork.
Basically, things instead of people.
Yes. I don't like to put people in the grant, I like things.
So I just want to make sure I'm clear on this. So last year in the library, we had somebody in here half-time that was a librarian? Is that what this is saying here?
The plan was for one person to share the responsibilities of overseeing the library and the computer lab as a teacher.
So now this year, we're going to have an ed tech in here
For next
full-time.
year, yes.
And that position wouldn't be here to be that, is that correct?
Pardon me?
Explain it again with Holly, just clarify what she was just saying.
That there is no full-time library media
Specialist.
teacher
For next year.
In
for
this
next year.
budget.
In the budget.
In the budget.
In the budget, right.
But Jen will be in here full-time for the kids when they
There
come
will
in.
be a full-time ed tech 3
Sorry, ed tech 30.
in the library and in the computer lab. And we're looking for the next level of support to come through
Sanford.
contract.
Right.
And
They
that
can do
person-
the cap.
And will that person periodically kind of float and rotate from schools and have a little time here? The Sanford
We're
coordinator?
saying that we want X number of hours a week, just like
Awesome.
we have with the food service coordinator.
Does that also give us access to their stacks? The books? Now, we got their coordinator, then I would think that we'd have access to their resources.
Good, well, meet, good meet.
So Trish, I'm just curious, because this is, so any questions that our ed tech has, she'll be able to have somebody that she can go to ask. It's kind of
Absolutely.
like the same thing that I do. I'm there when the nurse isn't there at my school, but if I've got questions, I call the RN.
Absolutely.
And she's going to have somebody that she can call, which is great.
Absolutely.
That's good.
So again, within the
It helps
budget.
the budget.
There's plans for the staff development piece, so coordination of services of any technology piece.
Yep.
Training on using equipment would be available.
Yep.
uh,
But the kids have access here full-time. That's good.
Full-time, right, 5 days a week.
And there's a history with Jen, I know the kids
Yeah.
loved her.
Absolutely.
They absolutely
Is she
loved her.
doing any media stuff, or is she strictly library?
She will be doing media as it is in the library, but there will be another Ed Tech 3 who has the experience in the computer lab.
Is that a full-time or a part-time?
That's full-time.
And that Ed Tech 3's been there for a while now, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Is
you've
that
gone-
even in this budget at this point? The second ed tech,
Yes.
No, she's there.
instruction-related tech?
The back in the 3.8.
It's in the operating.
Yeah, it's in
It's in the operating.
It's under my other.
Ooh, okay.
That's one of the 4.
It's
Musical
one of the
chairs.
4 ed techs.
Got it.
So it seems to me that the ed techs are really stepping up to the plate to help with our budget, and, you know, they're taking on some pretty significant roles here. We're
We
talking
have,
library and-
we have a significant number of ed techs who are ed tech 3 level.
Yeah.
All of
The-
them except one.
And those
It's
are
highly
huge
unusual.
roles,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Which why they have to be also tremendously supported,
yeah.
because they're taking on
Right.
roles that are to the fullest.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at a description of what an ed tech 3 is prescribed and allowed to do, we are expecting the max.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you've gone from one person who was part-time in 2 spots to 2 full-time people, and you're still paying an outside contractor.
You know, those,
We already had the full-time ed tech and the computer lab has been there already, full-time. There was a part-time ed tech in the library.
Not
No,
this past year.
full-time. Oh,
In the past, there
Part-time.
was a part-time one. So basically, no. We've eliminated a full-time teacher who was split between 2 ways and added an ed tech and possibly some contracted services through Sanford.
So you've had someone in the media end,
Yes, yeah,
full-time or part-time?
full-time.
On top of the librarian that was half media?
no, wait a minute. No, you're gonna, okay. Originally, in the budget last year, they had a full-time ed tech in the library. Then they hired the librarian/media specialist. That ed tech was then moved into the special ed budget. And then she was moved into the grant. And now we're moving her back into the library.
Yeah, but she was talking about the computer lab, and we've
Computer
always...
lab ed tech has been
We've always
there
had
for
a
a long time.
full-time
Yeah.
computer
Full-time.
lab.
And
That's
she's
one
been
of the
ed
other
tech has been here forever.
Yeah.
Who helped the person that was the librarian and half media, who helped her with the media end of it?
That
Anybody?
would be
That'd be
Mike.
Mike.
That would be tech person.
Okay.
Would be Mike.
Other questions about Article 6?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got something going on here, question-wise, one moment.
I have it while Paul looks for that. Just, this is more of a comment, I just don't know if people are aware, but going back to the previous conversation, and looking at some of the other pieces here, with the increase in the amount of books, just with some things I'm seeing in other schools, one of the things you want to be thinking about is the increased text complexity demands of the Common Core, and having conversations about how well those books fit. So there's, and the reason I bring that up is there's some good resources out there that help teachers have the conversations about really where do these books fit the best. You can have books that are really written at a simple level that have really really high-level themes, and you can have books with really high-level themes written at the second grade level. So there's some, with the text with the Common Core, that's becoming increasingly important to talk about the books we're actually putting in front of kids, because what we were putting in front of them isn't the same anymore. It doesn't apply, so there's some good stuff out there. If you buy in those books, if you're interested in some of those things, I can. Yeah.
thank you.
That's good.
AchieveTheCore.org. Have you seen those? AchieveTheCore.org. Yep, they've got some rubrics for looking at the qualitative, quantitative, and task reader parts of the text complexity matrix, more than you ever wanted to know.
And he just carries all around in his hand.
Yeah, but he probably forgets the milk.
And the kid, no. I think somebody picked her up.
My question was stipend related, so I can talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kim, if you want to go ahead and pass out.
So much.
One pager.
Is there, do we have a chief on stipends?
You have one already?
I do in my room.
I'm just curious, not anything.
It's exciting.
Thanks, Kim.
I think that's great.
Thank you.
Hands over back.
Right here.
Right here.
Thank you.
So was the library not open full time? It has been.
Why would the office manager
Yeah, it looks real nice.
Which one you looking
No,
at?
that's all.
I know,
Yeah.
but I'm looking at it.
All right, now that you have this, I would like to have Kim speak to this one.
That'd be
Obviously, it's our
nice piece.
smallest piece, with the least number of employees, as I mentioned. So we're basically just talking about 3 people, aren't we? If you include the sub-color.
Yeah, if you call it, yeah.
Sub-color.
Is that on?
That's on there, right.
Yep, yep, you're here. Yep, it's out. So basically, this budget is the principal, the office manager, we do have a sub-color stipend, the benefits that go with it, insurance, and everything down below, the telephone, the printing, pretty much they all stayed the same. The first question somebody might ask is the support salary difference between 1 and 3, and the difference was just a mathematical error from last year. So, other than that, this is, I think, one of the most straightforward budgets.
You're saying that the office manager's salary, there was a mistake in the way it was put in there last year? Or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it just.
She's not taking a pay cut?
No,
Okay.
no, in fact, she's.
Thank goodness.
She's getting everything up through,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it's just.
She's part of the association contract for the staff members.
Yes, yeah. I just didn't, I knew that looked like an egg source, so I just want people to realize it's just missing.
And that's also reflected in the group insurance?
No, okay,
Oh,
as
yeah.
I said in some previous budgets, the Maine State retirement, I realized was not budgeted at all last year, but yet the insurance, and all I can think of is, I know last year the range was greater, so maybe the cap was higher on the insurance, but fortunately it was high enough to cover the Maine State retirement. So,
You're talking about the percentage of increase for the regular insurance?
well,
That gave you the extra, is that what you're saying? Because it was a much larger.
it was a higher cap
It was a
last
much
year. It
higher
was a-
cap last
yeah,
year, and we came in low.
Yeah,
Came
you
in
came
at
in-
like 3%.
3%.
so,
Right,
yeah.
versus I think it was like 13,
Yeah, up to
13% was the
13.
cap last year.
It's 9.5 this year?
It's 9.5 this year.
They're trying to get it back.
Hopefully, yeah, no, hopefully I'm down to 2. But because I can't get the experience mod, I can't tell where we are.
Right.
So,
Any questions on Article 8?
I just have a quick, did I hear earlier in one of our meetings that we don't have we used to have a couple of secretaries in there. Do we not have somebody now that helps with the,
With special ed?
Yeah, special ed.
We have had a school year special ed secretary, and we are eliminating that because the case managers are taking on more of the meeting coordination and some of the other responsibilities, like reporting has been the state, the Maine Department of Ed
utilize this electronic reporting now, so a lot of our reporting is much easier, so.
So the office manager isn't taking on any of that responsibility? She doesn't have to do that part, she doesn't do the
No,
special ed,
no,
okay.
no,
I just wondered, like, the phone
absolutely
calls
not.
coming in and all that,
Yeah.
is that part of her now, that she's doing?
Thank you.
But there's additional help, right? Isn't there someone else hired or?
We think that there is some time in the superintendent's office, in terms of the second person in that office, to help us with lunch coverage.
Oh, yeah. Some of the non-essential
Right.
special ed,
Mhm.
not special ed tasks.
Right. Some of the lunch coverage was not a special ed task, it was, you could say regular ed, but that person was in your budget.
And at the end of the day, from 2:30 to 4, the
Right.
bus, listening for the buses can be covered within our office.
Right,
It's not
and that
a
wasn't special ed really either.
responsibility.
Any other questions about Article 8? If not, if we can adjourn our budget meeting until the next one, which is
Monday, we'll bring it all together on St. Patty's Day.
Monday.